A very good evening to all of you, and especially to you, Sir Naseeruddin Shah. Um, Thank you to the Cherry Blossom Festival, and especially the Cherry Blossom Literary Festival, for inviting Naseeruddin Shah, Sir, all the way here to Meghalaya, and for giving me this opportunity to be in conversation with him. Um, How does one even attempt to introduce such a dynamic, powerful, and a nuanced actor in his craft, whose focus and discretion in the films he chooses and the works, which is so interesting and inspiring to us young actors and filmmakers? An actor par excellence, with more than 200 films to his credit, notable especially in bringing Indian parallel cinema to the forefront. Over 60 theatre productions and numerous actors who have benefited from his teaching and mentorship. I know my one regret when I was at the National School of Drama was that we never had Nasir Sir as an acting teacher. So being in conversation with you here is in fact something that I know many would be envious of. So welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Before we begin, since we just paid tribute to the great S.D. Burman and his equally illustrious son R.D., I'd like to share a little anecdote about R.D. I never met Burman Da. Uh, he wasn't very active by the time I joined, but I was fortunate to have R.D. Burman compose music for a few movies that I acted in. And one of the most wonderful songs is from a Gulzar film, and it's Mera Kuch Saman Tumhare Paas Pada. So I'm not going to sing it for you, but I happened to be there at Gulzar Bhai's office when RD came to meet Gulzar, and Gulzar told him that these are the words of the song. So RD sat there with a very quizzical look on his face. And he said, अब अगली फिल्म में तुम ऐसा गाना लिख दो कि मेरे लिए आलू टमाटर और आलू और गोभी और प्याज भी ले आना. But it turned out, yeah, as you all know, he composed it very beautifully. Anyway, that's by way of introduction.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so I would like to start with, and it was something that we'd also discussed earlier. This is your second time in Shillong, I
That's
believe.
right, yeah.
And your first time here was when you were shooting Ek Pal way back in 1986. Was there anything about Shillong that stayed in your memory? Is there anything that you remember of that time?
Apart from the fact that I thought it was an extremely beautiful place, I don't remember much, because when one goes to shoot in a particular place, you don't have the time to really absorb the place itself, and you don't have the time to make friends or to go around and look at it. So all I knew was that it's a very beautiful place, and I wanted to come back. And the fact that it was beautiful didn't surprise me, because when I was in school, I had I won't call her a girlfriend, I call her a pen friend who lived in Shillong, who I found myself getting very slowly extremely smitten by. And I can say this even though my wife is present, she knows all about it. But we were in Shillong just for about 4 days, and the rest of the shooting was done in Jorhat.
Since you've also mentioned Ratna ma'am, it's it's such an honor to also have you here, ma'am. So welcome to the festival. So I must say, your time, especially in the 1970s, you were part of a huge sort of repertoire, and also amazing actors, writers, directors, with Om Puri, the late Om Puri sir, Amrish Puri, Shyam Benegal, of course, and I think your first film was with Shyam Benegal.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, Nishant. and also, Smita Patil and
Shabana.
Shabana Azmi and such Vijay Tendulkar and Girish Karnad. It was a time that really, I think, for me, when I was at the NSD itself, when we studied modern Indian drama, these were the playwrights, the actors, the scripts that we had looked at, that we'd read, that we'd studied. Um, is there anything perhaps about the 70s that you remember that you would like to bring to where we are? Anything, something nostalgic about the 70s? Is there perhaps?
More important than the nostalgia is the fact that I feel a terrible sense of loss, because in the late 60s and the early 70s, there was a feeling of a renaissance about to happen in Indian theatre, at least in the languages of the Central India and Western India. There was Girish Karnad, as you mentioned. There was Vijay Tendulkar. There was Mohan Rakesh. There was Badal Sarkar. There was Adi Rangacharya. There was several great playwrights who unfortunately all either faded away or passed away within a couple of decades, and they did not leave any successors. And that's what I feel a sense of loss about. That Girish Karnad, great as he was, and who is perhaps written, Tendulkar and Girish have perhaps written the two most wonderful plays ever written in India. They did not produce any, I don't know what the reason was, successors, anybody to follow up the wonderful work that these people did. But for me, as a beginner in the 70s, because I joined the National School of Drama in 70 when I was 20 years old, I was very unfamiliar with Indian dramatic literature. I'd studied in an English language school in Nainital, and then I did an English graduation from Aligarh University. And I was completely under the impression that the only great plays written were those written in English. And so I was in for a big surprise when I went to the drama school, and I was introduced not only to so many contemporary Indian playwrights, many of whom I hadn't even heard of, and who were writing such wonderful stuff, but also to several other playwrights apart from William Shakespeare and George Bernard Shaw, who till then I thought were the only playwrights in the world.
Yes, you do. I have your memoir here, which is absolutely amazing, and you do in fact talk a lot about how Shakespeare and also Shaw played from earlier on in your life, as your school life, where you were so inspired by their writings, by their works.
Yeah, and as far as Shakespeare is concerned, I was more inspired by seeing him performed. Shakespeare has been done a terrible disservice to by the teachers who teach Shakespeare. Shakespeare in the classroom is a terrible bore, as everybody here will agree, I'm certain.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was magical to see him on the stage, and for that there was a gentleman called Geoffrey Kendall who was responsible for introducing me to the magic of Shakespeare, because he had this troupe called Shakespeareana. He was 100% British, but had continued this very long love affair with India right from the time he was posted here during World War II as an entertainer for the troops, and fell completely in love with the country and decided to spend the rest of his life doing Shakespeare to those who needed it most of all. And that is the students in Asia, not just India. He also went to several countries in Asia. There was Singapore, there was Malaysia, there was Pakistan, Sri Lanka, what is now Bangladesh, and so on. He performed in all these countries to school children. Never did a commercial performance, never charged um, uh, absurd amounts of money for the tickets. In fact, we remember we never had to pay anything to watch this wondrous group present the same plays which would put us to sleep in class, but which were transformed into absolute magic when they appeared on stage. And that is where I learned that plays are written to be performed, not to be read, really. And that is really the problem with the way Shakespeare is taught.
I absolutely agree. Just to share a small experience, personal experience, we had done an adaptation of Shakespeare, and we worked The Tempest, and we worked with the circus. We worked with the circus in Kerala. And I remember how, when I read The Tempest, I thought, how am I ever going to, learn these lines and speak them? But I think when we adapted and placed it on the space of a circus, and we had all the circus actors, it made sense. The plays were meant, as you said, to be performed, not to be intellectualized.
Absolutely. Yeah. And doing it with circus performers must have been something very stimulating because they
Yes.
bring such a lot of vitality and so much skill
Yes,
to
yes,
their
yes.
job.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's not for nothing that it's called play,
Yes.
not work.
So talking as we talk about training. Let me ask you something. You've been trained at the National School of Drama, also at FTII. Um, may I ask, how do you think how important are these training institutions for young aspiring actors, directors, writers? Do they really prepare you for what's out there in the real world? Anything that you would want to change or comment upon?
Well, I think nothing can prepare you for the film world, no matter how much you've imagined it to be. It always turns out to be worse than your imagination. But training institutes, well, several great actors have never been to a training institute, which doesn't mean that training institutes are worthless, because there are several great actors who also emerged from training institutes. But being in an institute is more conducive to learning, and no one can stop you from learning. The fact is, acting is learnt, it's not taught. And because there are no formulae you can memorize, there are no textbooks that you can study, there is no magic jadoo ki pudiya that you can swallow which will make you a good actor. It's a lifelong slog, and it's all practical hard work, and it is life which really teaches you all about acting, more than books and more than any teachers can. I think life is the greatest teacher. And in fact, when I was finishing my drama school in the third year, there's this thing called the Viva Voce that we were subjected to, where we were asked questions. And I was asked what books on acting I'd read. And I replied, none. And that shocked the wits out of the examiners, because they expected me to quote Stanislavski, whose books nobody has read. I can promise you that.
Yes.
Nobody has read Stanislavski's books in their entirety.
True.
Everybody's read a few pages, as have I. So I said none, and I offended the examiners greatly by saying that I feel that acting is learned from life, not from books. But you cannot discount the importance of having mentors with you. You cannot discount the importance of getting the correct advice. And you cannot discount the importance of being exposed to all sorts of things, which we were as students at the NSD. I'd never seen a Kathakali performance before I went to the NSD. I'd never seen a Manipuri play before I went there. I'd never seen Kabuki before I went there. And being at NSD introduced me to all these things, and also to a regimen of training. But I think that the the abilities in acting that I picked up have been picked up along the way. The Film Institute, in fact, made me sit back and examine the work of acting more than at the drama school, which was all hands-on work. At the drama school, as you would know, we were taught how to use costumes, we were taught how to be audible to the last row, we were taught how to catch the light in our eyes, etc. The nuts and bolts of acting were seldom talked about, which is what happened at the Film Institute. And that is why I found both places very stimulating, because had I not been in the drama school, the course at the Film Institute would have made no sense to me because it was all analysis,
Right. Yes.
whereas in the drama school it was all practical work.
Practical. True, true. Um, being the veteran actor that you are with your many accolades, may I ask if there's still any insecurity you still have as an actor, especially when it comes to acting? Is there anything that that I would say
Worries me?
that worries you, yes, as an actor?
The fact that I may someday be unable to deliver on stage. It doesn't worry me unduly, but it is a thought that does occur to me every now and then. Will there ever come a time when I will not be able to remember my lines? Will there ever come a time when I won't be able to summon up the energy that's required to be on stage for 2 hours? It these are thoughts that occur to me. I can't say it worries me greatly. About insecurities, no, because I'm more or less aware of my abilities, and I've more or less tapped the whatever potential I had. So, and I've done almost every part that I ever dreamt of doing. I'm often asked, is there any role that I'm still anxious to do? And the truthful answer is no, there is none. I mean, I wouldn't say no if a worthwhile director asked me to play King Lear or someone asked me to play Don Quixote. I wouldn't say no, but I don't base my life on these hopes because an actor is seldom objective about himself, and if someone sees in me a potential of playing any of these parts, I would happily do them. What I do look forward to is the next interesting role that will come my way.
Yes, that's true. Thank you so much for that. Um, it was really something to hear that, especially to a young actor like me. Um, Moving on, since we're here at the literary festival, and I would very much like to talk about your literary work, your memoir. Since I first started reading it, I just continued to read it and couldn't put it down until I completed it. Um, may I perhaps ask you if you would like to read a passage from here, or
All right, if you say so, though. After a series of genuine writers reading their work, it's a little bit embarrassing. But yeah, okay, I'll give it a try.
all right? Would you like to choose?
Have you? No, you choose.
I have chosen actually two passages, but perhaps I could. One is where it's really in, I think it was Saint Anselm's.
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 Yeah.
Which was about a competition, and you're preparing to play Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. That's one passage, if you'd like to read that. And the other, I think, is about when you first went to Bombay and the entire journey of being there and finding yourself completely lost,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
Any of
Yeah,
of
the first one,
those?
I
The
think.
first one. All right.
About Saint Anselm's,
Yes.
which was oops,
Oops, sorry.
and
Would you need more light?
no, I think I can read it. Now, to give you a little background on this, I was in a school called St. Joseph's College in Nainital, run by the Irish Christian brothers, who were a very grim set of folks, and also believed in corporal punishment, and was meted out to us frequently. I was often the butt of a lot of it. Every year, there was a massive annual concert staged in the school, and it was invariably an opera. And there were some wonderful things that I saw: the gondoliers, the Mikado, the Nightingale, and so on. But they were mostly operas, and I couldn't sing a note. But apart from that, I used to feel that I could be able to act if I were given the chance, but I never was. I was the dullard in the class. I used to sit in the last row and fall asleep in the during physics lessons. Some years ago, I played Einstein. Yeah. And Einstein must have turned in his grave. But the performance was reasonably successful. So anyway, the point is I was dying to get onto the stage and I never got an opportunity. And I thought it's a terrible injustice. So what happened was that I got hauled out of St. Joseph's because I wasn't doing too well, and my father wanted to keep me under his eye in Ajmer, where he lived in Rajasthan, and he put me into the school called St. Anselm's, which was run by Indian Jesuit priests. In St. Anselm's, nobody knew what an idiot I was, so I had a fresh start over there. Now, and then one day, a play competition was announced. This is after I'd been in Anselm's a few months and no one knew who I was. And then one day, a play competition was announced in the school. Each class was supposed to produce a half-hour piece with the best ones to be staged on annual day. The students themselves were supposed to take the initiative in devising the show. I knew instantly what I thought our class should do, and since no one else displayed any enthusiasm about it, my vote was carried. Jeffrey Kendall, who I mentioned earlier, has been the greatest inspiration I've had in my life in several ways. But first of all, as an absolutely stunningly versatile actor. We saw several wonderful films in St. Joseph's too. I saw films of actors like Laurence Olivier and Spencer Tracy and Charles Lawton and Marlon Brando when I was in class 7 and class 8, and I thought they were pretty great. But when I saw Mr. Kendall on stage, I thought he was greater than any actor I'd ever seen. And because he could change so immediately from one part to another, his speech was as clear as crystal, and the way he brought Shakespeare to life. So I had seen Mr. Kendall play Shylock several times, and I could do a pretty good imitation of him. So with Kendall's Shylock fresh in my mind, and some newly acquired friends, we ransacked the moldy, long unused costume cupboard and came away with a mean-looking dagger, a brown cassock probably donated to the school by some Franciscan monk. The cassock, I mean, not the dagger. Also, what I thought would pass off as a loyally gown for Portia, and some velvety, vaguely Venetian-looking pantaloons and jackets for Bassanio and Antonio. The idea being to do scenes from The Merchant of Venice, with me as Shylock naturally, and as Portia in man's garb, the best frog dissector in class. C.P.S. Shastri, who is now a psychiatrist in Chicago. Not that his playing the role necessarily had anything to do with that. And my friend J.R. promised he could stick on me the best beard ever. He produced a bundle of crepe hair and a tube of rubber solution to prove it. The voluminous copy of Shakespeare's collected works, which had been gathering dust ever since Zahir, my eldest brother, who was the brains of the family and who won 2 Best Actor awards while we were in school and never acted again after that. But one of the awards he won was a book of the collected works of Shakespeare, which very movingly he presented to me when I joined the drama school. And I marked out all of Shylock's juiciest speeches. Out of our motley group of 4, the only one with experience of the stage, as I missed no opportunity to point out, was myself. So what I said went. And amazingly for me, I seemed to know instinctively what I should do on stage. I really did feel that this was where I belonged. It was the only place, apart from the cricket field, where I felt completely happy in my skin. During this time, coincidentally, I also got called to a tryout for the school cricket team, and so cricket became an alibi for going to rehearsals. The cramping inhibitions that had so beset me in SEM and the nervous twitches I'd always had began to erase themselves. The crushing feeling of bewildered incompetence about myself, the conviction that I was extremely stupid, diminished but didn't go away. It still hasn't fully. However, in this new school, where the extent of my idiocy had not yet been noticed, I could operate with a degree of confidence I had not known before. In real life, too, people began to listen and they sometimes approved. I had not known that before either. And anyway, we did this play and it was much appreciated by everybody who saw it, and that was my first taste of acceptance. It was the first time in my life I felt that people are listening to me and people are responding to what I'm saying. And if there has been a turning point in my life, it was that day. When I was on stage, I felt as safe as I must have felt in my mother's womb. I knew exactly what I had to do. I was not nervous for an instant, and never have been. It may sound vain to say this, but I've never have been nervous ever going onto the stage. I have been nervous plenty of times when I've been asked to sing and dance in movies, but never on the stage. And what I tell younger actors is, what are you nervous about? This is something you always wanted to do. This is something you've fought with your parents to be able to do. And now that you're getting a chance to do it, your legs are trembling and you're breaking out into a cold sweat. I don't understand this. And so I never feel nervous before going onto the stage. I feel nothing but impatience to be up there. And as I said, the play was uh, received extremely well. Everybody was, I became that actor guy in that school. And funnily, everything, and this is not such an uncommon story, everything about me improved. As I said, I got into the school cricket team. My grades started getting better. I started getting better reports at home and so on. And my dad was convinced I was spending more time with my books, whereas the fact is I was spending all my time on the stage. But the fact that I was doing something I was truly happy in, and something that I was lucky enough to discover as my solitary ability in life, that is what was helping me in every other way in life and to come to terms with what I was.
Thank you. And in Khasi, we say Kublai Shibon, which is thank you very much. Kublai.
Kublai Shibun,
Kublai.
all
Kublai
of you.
Shibon. Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful reflection, really. When I was thinking of a passage and when I read that line from, and then one day a memoir, that passage specifically, it was exactly that, I think, that resonated in me as well. The fact that, there's an impatience to be out there on the stage. To listen to your voice, perhaps your inner voice, and uh, you become whoever you'd like to be. There's no limit
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
who you can be, what
Yes.
you can do.
Yes.
There's no limit to who you can connect to and tell a story. And I think that that confidence is something that is so important, especially right now. As I'm doing workshops with different theatre students, this is something that I always think it's what I carry with me. The fact that you say, go up there, go onto the stage. That's your space. You own that space, and there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yes, and in fact, a very important part when I later, after finishing college, went to the drama school in Delhi, and there was Mr. Ibrahim Al Qazi, who was the director of the institute there, and he uh, uh, um, gave great importance to discipline and organization and aesthetics, equal importance to all three. And he made us realize that it's futile praying to God before a performance. God has too many other things to do. He's not going to be bothered to correct your performance. So he detested people who would bow to the stage or who would, pay obeisance to the stage before stepping on. And he would say, I don't want to see any of you doing that. Because you'll only do it if somebody's watching. If it means so much to you, come here at 5 o'clock in the morning and do your prayer to the stage when no one else is here. But if I see anybody else doing this when people are watching, I'm going to give him a kick in the pants. This does not show your respect for the stage. Bowing and touching your forehead to the stage does not show your respect. What shows your respect for the stage is the number of drops of sweat that fall when you work on the stage. And that is a lesson I've carried with me all my life.
Um, in hindsight, is there anything in your memoir that, if you look back, is there anything that you regret putting in the memoir in
No.
hindsight? Or
No, absolutely not. I'm often asked, how could you be so frank and how could you be so honest about it? So I say, well, I mean, am I dishonest in every other thing? And I realized that if I were to write a memoir which was worth anything, it's better to be honest about it. It's better to tell it as it is. I don't see any harm in that, and there's not a thing. Not only do I regret nothing I've written, there isn't a thing I regret about my entire life. I've made several mistakes. I've done some pretty ghastly performances in some very bad movies, which were mistakes. But I don't regret having done any of it because I did all of it out of my own choice. Nobody put a pistol to my head and said, you got to do this film. I did it because I wanted to do it. Some things I failed in and some things I succeeded at. So, no, absolutely, to answer your question, no regrets.
Absolutely. I mean, this book really, and then one day, a memoir, is a book I would suggest everyone to read, and it's precisely this. And even Ramachandra Guha says, it's searingly honest, and there's something about that, the honesty that you bring, to how you talk about your work, the vulnerability that you bring in the book is simply is so amazing.
Thank you.
Really amazing. So thank you for this. um, so moving on, I have two questions actually of your work. You also talk a lot about the late Om Puri in your memoir. And who also has actually saved your life once in a very frightening incident, if I may say. And also the camaraderie that you share with Mr. Om Puri, that you shared with him in your earlier films, as well as in Makbul, an adaptation of Macbeth, where you play one of the two witches as the two corrupt constables.
Yeah.
That's something I look back at what you share with him, and it's just so amazing to see the two actors working together. Is there was this connection? Is there anything that a favorite memory or something that you have of him, and this connection that you shared with him, was it only with him, or have you felt this connection with any other actor as well?
Well, subsequently, perhaps, yes, but Om was somebody who inspired me greatly. When I was a student at the drama school, he had come from Patiala, I had come from Aligarh, from college, done an English literature BA. Om had studied till high school and worked as a clerk in a bank in Patiala and used to do theatre in his spare time. And his English was very poor. You could see that he's partly rustic, and but there was no mistaking the smell of integrity about him. And the kind of hard work he put into his work, into his job, which I never did. I was a very arrogant sort of an actor when I was a student in the drama school. And Om was really an example to me. The way he applied himself and the growth I saw him undergo in the 3 years that we were there, to grow from this extremely shy, uncertain kind of person into a man full of confidence who could deliver any kind of a performance was a real eye opener. And after I left the drama school, I have followed Om's example very, very closely. I've always admired him. I loved him greatly. And there is a memory, yes, since you talk of memories, I would like to share with you all because, as you all know, Om straddled international cinema, which is the last thing, one expected that he would be able to do. He worked not only in India, he worked in England, he worked in America, he worked in Hollywood. He did starring parts in Hollywood movies. With this kind of background, it was quite an achievement. And the memory that I'd like to share is when we joined the drama school in the first year, the drama school didn't have a hostel. We had to make our own arrangements to live wherever we could. So my dad had a friend who was a member of parliament and who had a bungalow very close to the drama school, and I was lodged over there. Om was living with another person called Jaspal, who was also in our class, whose uncle was a guard at Old Delhi Station. And I assumed they were living in a nice kind of place. I mean, a guard is a pretty grand guy for a small child, you know. Every boy wants to be an engine driver when he grows up, you know. At least I did, and I'm sure there are many here who also did. But a guard is something else, you know. So I thought guards must be living in bungalows, maybe, you know. They're such grand people. And one day Om invited me to have dinner with him. I lived in New Delhi and he lived in just opposite Old Delhi Station. And when I arrived at this house, I realized that Om was sleeping in the corridor outside the house. And this corridor faced smelly old Delhi Station and the road leading from Old Delhi Station to the Red Fort, if any of you are familiar with Delhi's geography, which is very noisy, very smelly, and very smoky and very dusty. And Om would sleep, he had his bed in that corridor. He had a little stove and he had a book rack in which there were 2 or 3 books. There was a lungi hanging there and a shirt or two. And that's all he had. And I was stumped when I saw this, because I was living in a comfortable bedroom. And I could see this man is an equally good actor as I am, perhaps even better. And he's having to live like this. I was very shocked, but then and he had made the dinner he was going to give me on that little Primus stove, which you had to pump, you know, and which smelled to high heaven. And he made a most delicious dinner of egg curry and dal, which I demolished, and the taste of which I can still remember. Om made that with his own hands. This is a time when we were all getting 200 rupees a month as a scholarship at the NSD. And to think of the journey Om traversed from this corridor opposite Old Delhi Station to starring parts opposite Jack Nicholson and Tom Hanks and people like that in Hollywood. I think what Om achieved was truly exemplary.
Thank you for that. I think something that connects me very deeply to your work, and also what you speak about is this. An actor like you, or you don't look at yourself as a star. I mean, how should I put this? The fact that you bring yourself so down to earth, for us to have a conversation like this,
Well, I can act pretty difficult at times also. No, because an actor's, see, there is a saying that an actor's life is very short and, 5 years or 7 years or that's it. No, a star's life is very short, not an actor's. An actor, because a star is a commodity. A star is a thing for sale, like the Colgate toothpaste or the, or the toothbrush, which once you've had enough of it, you throw it away, and that's what happens to stars. Secondly, they're limited by the nature of their stardom. They're condemned to do the same kind of part in film after film after film after film. If they try anything different, the audience rejects them, most of the time because they didn't do it well, but a lot of the time also because the audience has certain expectations. A star has to be predictable. A star has to give the audience what they want, not what he wants to do. If he has any artistic urges, then he'd better stop thinking of being a star. And that is why I prefer to think of myself as an ordinary working actor, not as a star, because if you start thinking of yourself as that, then I think you're very close to delusion.
True. Um, Out of the many films that you've done, the 200 films, do you think you could pick, whether it's maybe a favorite film that you've acted in, or a director a favorite director perhaps? Is there anything, any particular, is there one
It's
particular film
No, it would be
that you,
unfair to pick one particular film because whichever film I went into it with all my heart and soul. All didn't work out as well as I had hoped they would, but there was nothing wrong with them. It was a wrong choice. But I'm extremely grateful to Shyam Benegal for having given me my first few opportunities. I did my first 4 films with Shyam, and no one else would touch me with a barge pole. But Shyam kept having faith in me and cast me in film after film in 4 very different parts, which gave me the chance to explore 4 different facets of myself. And I had realized quite early on that I don't have, since I don't have the matinee idol looks, what is it that I do have as an actor? Because an actor is what I want to be and nothing else. I knew this from the age of 14. I was certain of it. And I realized that what I have is a personality that can be molded. I have a face which can alter itself. And I used to experiment since I first started sprouting facial hair. I kept experimenting with it all the time, or with the hair on my head, or with my body, or with various things. And I resolved that I would not get stuck playing the same role in film after film, no matter, or in job after job, no matter how much benefit it brought me, because I knew I would be unhappy doing that. What I think any actor can do and should do is to explore the potential within himself, and we all have unlimited potential within us. And so I'm often asked by student actors, what do we do if we are playing a character that is completely different from us? And the answer to that is that there is no character that is completely different from you, because each one of us has the potential to be anything. Given a different set of circumstances, any of you or any of us could have been a different person today. Physically, you would have been the same person, but inside your head, you would have been a different person, and you would not have been acting. If circumstances had been different, I could have been a beggar on the street, I could have been a drug peddler, I could have been a thief, I could have been a murderer, or I could have been a priest, or I could have been a preacher, or I could have been a teacher, or I could have been a saint. I have all that potential within me, and so does everyone else. This is something I discovered quite early in life and decided to pursue. And I didn't want to get stuck in the trap of typecasting. I knew that for sure. Because I
yes,
knew I'd
yes,
get very bored with it very quickly. And
yes,
there's enough evidence of actors who do the same parts again and again and get tired
get
very,
comfortable.
very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. Um, how do you think a cult classic like Jane Bhi Do Yaro Yaro would be received in our times now? Do you think we would benefit from a remake or an adaptation?
Well, if it is remade, it'll have to be made on a much larger scale because the scale of corruption has multiplied a millionfold since the time Jane Bhi Do Yaro was made. In fact, Kundan did try, he did write a script for a sequel, uh, which is to happen now. Unfortunately, Ravi Baswani, who was an integral part of Jane Bhi Do Yaro, the film could not have been made without Ravi Baswani. He was the first to go. Then Om left us. Bhakti Barve had already passed away, and then Kundan himself died. So it never happened. But I think he was having a lot of trouble conceiving an idea which would do justice. That first Jane Bhi Do Yaro got made despite everything. In the face of 100 odds, while making it, I was not at all hopeful that this film would ever see the light of day. And if it did, it would be mocked at. People would consider it an absolutely ridiculous film. Well, they do, but that ridiculousness has some germ of truth in it. And funnily, it was not a very big success when it was released. I think it was released around 1984. But it was not a big success at all. Over the years, it has become a cult movie.
Yes.
I find it, I think it's because people have been watching it at home. And when people watch a film at home, they probably watch a thing with more patience than if they've paid a fat sum and paid a ridiculous amount for the popcorn. You know, then I think you tend to be a little more judgmental.
True. So, watching now that we're all watching films at home, we have, besides theatre and film, there's the newer medium, which is the OTT platform. And I've just been watching the web series you've been in, Bandish Bandits, which is an amazing script, amazing work. Can you tell us a bit about that, perhaps, and also maybe follow up with how do you think? What is your take on these platforms that we have now with Netflix and
I think
Amazon?
OTT is the future. I fear that cinema watching will not remain a communal experience for very long. It will become a solitary experience. And what I hope will happen is that the quality of our cinema will improve. Because you can't be watching a blood-drenched revenge drama with people getting their heads blown off over your dining table. When you're eating your food and your children are sitting there. Secondly, you can't whistle and throw coins at your television set, And those who do are going to have to find other things to whistle and throw coins at. Because single screen theaters are disappearing. There were several hundred in Mumbai. There are hardly 2 left now. They've all turned into multiplexes. And I guess that's the future. That is what we will all have to live with, watching films at home someday. I have predicted the demise of cinema theaters for a while, and I'm sure it will happen, sad though that fact is. Another very interesting thing about the OTT is several actors who worked on the OTT platform, performing plays, have felt very frustrated because they said, you can't see the audience.
True.
You can't hear the audience. You don't know how they're reacting. You don't know whether they're liking it or not. So they found that disturbing. Speaking for myself, I did not find it disturbing at all. I found it stimulating, and I found it challenging to be able to retain the same level of enthusiasm, the same level of energy, and the same level of commitment to the performance, despite the fact that you're oblivious to who's watching you. and you don't know how they're reacting. That should, in any case, that should not matter to you. When I'm on stage, the audience's reactions do not determine the quality of my work. I may be doing a play which I think is very funny and nobody's laughing, but that will not distract me. That will, in fact, help me to focus more on what I'm supposed to do. And what I'm supposed to do is not wait for the audience's applause, but to try and communicate the text, which is what my job as an actor is. And working in front of my computer with just a little green light of the camera to look at, I did not find it disturbing at all. In fact, it's been a very important lesson and something that I hope to pass on to other actors as well.
That's really interesting to hear that, because I think at the moment right now, especially with the pandemic, we're all stuck in our homes and we have our phones or our cameras, and that's the interaction that we have. And I think a lot of us are wondering, are complaining, what is going to happen next. But to hear how you're embracing it, and how you are adapting to it, um, is really something very, very amazing and inspiring.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. If could we, I think we're also, I wish we could go on. Really, I haven't, I've got a script here. I prepared a script for you, but
Some other time.
some other time, yes. Um, could we open the floor, perhaps? We have time for two questions. Yes. I think in front we have here two questions. So we have one here and one out there behind the gentleman out there in blue. If I'm yes.
Hello. Thank you for coming here to Shillong, sir. I've been watching your films from since 1980s, actually. My most favorite film of yours is Manthan, and I would love you to say anything about it, anything that you feel about it.
Oh, Manthan.
Manthan.
Right.
I still cannot forget Manthan. Thank you.
It was a very important film in my life because my first film was Nishant by Shyam Benegal, and when Nishant was released and it was pretty successful, Shabana was already a star with Ankur. After Nishant got released, Amrish Puri, Girish Karnad, Smita Patil, Mohan Agashe, Kulbhushan Kharbanda, Smita, everybody got elevated to known status, and all of them started getting a great deal of work. There was one actor in that film who got no work at all, and that was me. I got nothing after Nishant, and I was pretty distraught because I thought I'd done well. I'm still very proud of my performance in Nishant, but it was not noticed. Or rather, it was noticed, except that the part I played was that of such a namby-pamby character that nobody thought this guy could be good for anything else. It was after Manthan that other work started happening for me. And when Manthan was being made, everybody was terribly cynical about it. Everybody said, the Doodh Walon ki picture hai, kaun dekhega? Who is going to watch a film about milkmen in Gujarat? To everybody's surprise, Manthan turned out to be the dark horse of the year, and it was hugely successful. And I was noticed at last, and luckily for me, those who had seen Nishant and thought I was just a local actor from Hyderabad sat up and took notice, and they realized, hey, this is the same chap who was in Nishant, and he's completely different now. And the two parts were drastically different, as you know. And both, as I was talking earlier, I managed to find the potential of both those characters within myself, equally convincingly, I think. And it was after Manthan that work started coming in and recognition began, and I began to earn a little bit of money. So to me, Manthan is a very important part of my journey.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So
Where are you?
Here, sir. Here. Sir, here, sir.
Okay, right, yeah.
So you were discussing about OTT platforms. So over the years, from recent times, regional cinema from different parts of India are like coming out, and OTT platforms are helping them. Like specifically Amazon Prime, I have seen like many regional films are on that, like this Amazon Prime. So my question is, where do you see Indian cinema after 10 years? Like whether it's Hindi or like any kind of regional films, like so.
I certainly have great faith in the younger generation of our country, and that includes very much the filmmakers and the playwrights and the theatre workers and the film workers. I feel that we will lose this delusion that the whole world has discovered Bollywood and the whole world has finally realized what great films are made in Bombay. The fact that Hindi cinema is seen all over the world is for the same reason that Indian food is eaten all over the world. Because it's spicy and it's colorful and it's, it's Indian and it's exotic. The difference between Indian food and Hindi movies is that Indian food has substance and therefore it will survive. If Indian cinema doesn't develop substance pretty soon, I don't think this worldwide fascination with Indian cinema will continue. But I do see a future because I do see a large number of young people today making the kind of movies they believe in, the kind of movies they feel should be made without having to work under the pressure of a producer forcing your hand and saying cast a star, put in a song, put in an action sequence, put in a murder, put in a rape. You don't have to face that nonsense any longer. You don't have the fear of the censors sitting on your head who threatening to chop every meaningful scene in it. And there are several movies for whom being shown on the OTT has been a blessing in disguise. A couple of them I have acted in, and I know that these movies would perhaps would not have been seen by as many people had they been shown in the theaters. Because they don't have any stars, they don't have any item numbers, they don't have any actors who the audience is dying to see. They have the right cast. And these movies benefited greatly, and that will continue to happen. And my hope is, and I'm pretty optimistic about it, that in 10 years, the formula film will be relegated to, it won't end, of course not, it will continue always. The meaningless entertainer will always be made, but more and more meaningful films will be made by the younger generation. I'm pretty confident about that.
Last question.
Thank you so much for taking me. You said that Jeffrey Kendall taught you to romance the stage. So when you became Hero Hiralal, how was it to romance his granddaughter, Sanjana?
And one dialogue from his film.
Well, I've known Sanjana since she was a small child, and so it was kind of strange to be cast in a romantic part opposite her, but not entirely, unique, because I have ended up romancing on screen girls younger than my daughter, which is something I never thought I'd have to do. Singing songs on the screen is also something I never thought I'd have to do. I ended up doing it, and because I never thought I'd have to do it, I didn't prepare myself for it. Now, for those of you young people who may be here and who may be interested in doing those kind of movies, do not think I'm knocking your ambitions. No, not at all. If that's the kind of actor you want to become, and it's important for every person aspiring to be an actor to realize what kind of an actor he or she wants to be and prepare yourself for that. If you want to sing and dance, prepare yourself for it. It is, to me, the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in the field of acting is to do the dancing around a tree. A tree is not a very good partner. A tree doesn't make his partner look good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your questions, and it's been great, to have had this interaction. And like I said, I wish it didn't have to end. But thank you so much, sir, for being here and for being the inspiring artist that you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, speakers.